Good morning, MLB Pro. Welcome to last night this morning. I guess I don't have a lot of modifiers to that. Let's talk about the 7 games that we had last night in MLB Pro. As the majority of the league took their first or second off day of the year. We'll start in the National League, where the 6-6 Cincinnati Reds took on the 10-2 Philadelphia Phillies, arguably the best team in baseball right now. Certainly the best team in the National League, as some of the powerhouses expected to compete this year have fallen back. We'd see a pitching matchup of Broderick Wilson on the mound for the Philadelphia Phillies. Broderick Wilson entering his second game of the year. No decision, I believe, in the first game that he threw this year. No, team won. Team won? Yeah, team won. And actually, his last start, I guess this is his third start of the year. Last start was against Cincinnati, and in that Cincinnati a game against Cincinnati at home in Philadelphia, the Phillies would actually pull out the win. He would go 6 1/3 in about 3 innings, striking out 10 in the game on the 6th, I believe it was, 6th of the 8th. Last night was the 13th, and Broderick Wilson will go again. Be a much different tune for him early, honestly, as he got through the first inning pretty quickly. I guess the big difference here between the two guys in the start here, Jordan Lyles, was the other pitcher that started this game. But Broderick Wilson got through the bottom of the first early, very, very quickly, about 7 pitches. The problem started in the bottom of the second, after the Phillies had taken a 2-run lead on the backs of who else? Andrew Vaughn with a single and Luis Robert hitting a 2-run shot. The bottom of the second started early enough. Broderick Wilson got Nolan Jones to ground out on 4 pitches. The very first pitch he threw, though, to Rafael Castillo was a solo shot, 339 feet to deep left. He would follow that up by getting Buster Posey. But right after that, again, first pitch, Travis Shaw would single, ground ball up the middle, get on base, and then Royce Lewis would come through in a 3-1 count. 3-1 count, excuse me. I hit a 2-run shot, 420 feet, an absolute monster to right, to make it 3-2 Reds. Felicio Roxa would get on base after that, but they were able to get out the inning, no more problems. It'd be quiet in the top of the third for the Phillies, again, as Jordan Lyles was able to go 1-2-3 through Luis Urias, Charlie Harper, and Cam Gundy. In the bottom of the third, the big sticks came out again as Brandon Solomon hit a solo shot right off the rip. Well, it wasn't right off the rip, literally, but the first batter hits a 414-foot blast center field. JD Martinez would single right after that. You'd get a couple of quick outs. Nolan Jones and Rafael Castillo going down for Buster Posey would come in and hit a double to deep left field. The runner would score from third, I guess, as Brandon Solomon had moved up a couple of times throughout that inning to make it 4-2 in favor of the Reds. The Phillies would call a run back in the top of the fourth as KJ Costello would double and Andrew Vaughn would come around to score from second base, but they'd stop it there. We would then go scoreless for a couple of innings. You'd see the next one scored in the bottom of the fifth as by this point, by the way, Broderick Wilson had to be pulled. He had thrown so many pitches. He got there 3 innings. He got 5 runs. He had to get pulled out of the game. So at this point, we are now looking at a totally different player. I don't know why I said it like that, but anyway, you're looking at a totally different situation here, but they will score again as Royce Lewis would single and score Nolan Jones, who again kind of got moved around. They would walk Nolan Jones, Rafael Castillo would single. Damon Edwards came on to pitch for Franklin Morton after he gave up a couple of hits, and he would walk Travis Shaw on 4 straight pitches. He would then have Royce Lewis single. Only 1 run would score off of the single as Rafael Castillo couldn't make it around to third. I'm going to come back to haunt them a little bit as Felicio Roxa would strike out, and then Josh Lowe would fly out, so no additional runs scored in a pretty dangerous situation for the Reds. It's all right. Jordan Lyles would get through the top of the 6th scoreless. No damage done in the bottom of the 6th for the Reds. Jordan Lyles, again, got through the top of the 7th really, really well. The Reds threatened. I think they faced something like 20 pitchers or something off Damian Edwards and Christian Kissock in the bottom of the 7th, but they were not able to capitalize. Finally, Jordan Lyles came out after pitching 7 great innings against the best offense in baseball, at least the best offense in the National League. And anyway, the short version of this is the Reds held on, which is the shocking part, right? The Reds moved to 7-6. They get the win over the Phillies. The Phillies fall to 10-3. Jordan Lyles gets his first win of the season. Broderick Wilson, that was his first loss of the season, also his first decision. He's not been able to get a lot of decisions in his 3 starts that he has made. Dean Cromwell would come in for his 3rd save of the year into Cincinnati. And that's the game, right? Cincinnati would win. I guess I should have checked ahead of time if this was game 1 of the series or game 2, so my apologies. That's game 1 of a 4-game series going into the weekend. The Reds just came off of getting swept in Philadelphia at the start of last weekend. And then they lost 2 of 3 to Atlanta following that. Now they get Philly at home. Great way to start off the weekend series by getting a win. If you're a Cincinnati Reds fan, if you're a Phillies fan, you can take a loss here and there. You're not panicking about this team at all. And you still got 3 left to try to salvage this series. I think the Cincinnati Reds would be happy with a split before they take on the Rays, the Pirates, and the old Texas Rangers. Philly, just for context, just came off of slaughtering the Miami Marlins 18-1, 10-2, 9-3 over the previous series. So that offense was due to cool down a little bit. So we'll see how this one plans out the rest of the way. But, if you're the rest of the National League, you're kind of happy to see, okay, the Phillies can be beat. Let's move on. It's been 6 minutes talking about the Reds-Phillies game. So my apologies if that's not what you came here for. If you didn't come here for that, I don't know what the fuck you're listening to this podcast for. Let's talk Pirates, Cardinals. We had some chat in the chat in the what would you call it? I was trying to get like cute about it, but in the Slack chat regarding the Pirates' interesting season this far. They've won 1 game of every series, and literally just one, right? So they are rocking a record of 4-8 entering this game. The Cardinals off to a slow start, not exactly what you'd expect if you are thinking about the Cardinals of old or even the Cardinals of recent. But anyway, the team of story of 2 teams underproducing. You get a pitching matchup of Jeff Wallace, a former White Sox pitcher for the Pirates, and Logan Gilbert for the Cardinals. Neither would figure into the decision, right? Not great, although Logan Gilbert's got hit a little bit unfairly. There was a couple of errors in the field by the Cardinals, so he gives up 1 earned run, but 6 total runs over 4 2/3, 100 pitches. Jeff Wallace would give up 4 runs, all earned over 5 2/3. This was an interesting game to watch, right? Nothing really happens here until the 5th inning. The Pirates take an early 1-0 lead. They then they get 5 more in the top of the 5th, which is just a heck of an inning, right? If you go to this top of the 5th inning, it's very, very interesting. Logan Gilbert's still in. You get the first out on Omar Silva, then Yanez goes on with a single, Isaac Paredes goes with a single, and it's just first and second. You then get a fly out pretty deep. Runner from second tags up, so who would that be? That'd be Omar Silva will move over. No, it'd be Andres Yanez move over to third. So you get 2 outs here, first and third. You then get a count full walk to Jonathan India. Before you then get a 2-2 count and a single to David Moyen, which will score Andres Yanez. And actually, you'll also get Isaac Paredes coming home for the first 2 runs of the inning as 2 will score on that. Braden Mack, next batter up, is then hit by a pitch to reload the bases. They will then walk Jordan Groshans. So that's 2 runs that have come in on walks and not hits, as Jonathan India would score. You then get a single from Dominic Fletcher, who will score David Moyne. Nobody else will come through. And then finally, mercifully, you have Logan Gilbert being pulled. That's 3 or 4 runs there that he is not credited with. I'm not exactly sure why. Maybe the hit by pitch doesn't count towards earned runs, but all of those runs seemed earned to me. But whatever. So Tyler Baum would come in finally and relieve them. You'd have Braden Mack would score on a wild pitch. The first pitch that Tyler Baum throws is a wild pitch, and Braden Mack will score. He would finally get Omar Silva to strike out on a bases or a full count, no longer bases loaded strikeout. Right. So at this point, you're thinking, all right, Pittsburgh's up 6-0. We're going into the bottom of the 5th. They actually leave the bottom of the 5th, still up 6-0. This game's out of reach. We're in a good spot. Well, you forget that this is the Pittsburgh Pirates, perhaps if that's their thought process, because they will just slowly and surely lose this lead to make it more interesting. In the next inning, you get Logan Tanner singling, you get Randall Walker singling. Wow. So actually, Logan Tanner would single, then steal second base. Randall Walker would single. Logan Tanner would come home for run number one. You then have Julio Rodriguez single, Randall Walker go to second. Brady Vanderbilt would hit a three-run shot to make it a 6-4 game as we exit the sixth. The Pirates were unable to capitalize on a couple of hits. Well, that's not true, actually. They scored a run. David Moyne would score to make a couple runs here, actually. David Moyne and Braden Mack would score to make it 8-4. So again, now you're in the seventh inning, you're up 4 runs. You leave the seventh inning up 4 runs. They'd be threatening a little bit in the top of the eighth, but they wouldn't be able to put anything on. They would then give up, what is this, 4 runs in this inning? They give up 4 runs in the bottom of the eighth. Just a brutal feeling. And you'd go into the ninth. They would go down 1-2-3 in the ninth. And in the bottom of the ninth, Jonah Ryan is on the pitch. Julio Rodriguez singles in his first appearance. Then Brady Vanderbilt would hit a 2-run shot as the very next batter, and they would lose. And a walk-off home run from Brady Vanderbilt on behalf of the St. Louis Cardinals, 10-8. Heartbreaking if you are a Pirates fan. Love it if you're a Cardinals fan, as they definitely needed that win. It pulls them to 6-7. It also gives them the first win of the series, right? As this is a 4-game series against the Pirates through the weekend. The Cardinals coming off a series loss to the Rockies in their last series. They did beat the Brewers in the series before, but right before that's the only series win they've got. They lost the series to the Braves. They lost the series to the Blue Jays so far. So the Cardinals seeking their second series win of the year. As we've already talked about, Pittsburgh has not been able to win more than one game in a series all season. So they'll be hoping to get that win at some point. Now, they've had a difficult schedule to some extent. Right? They played Houston for 3. They played Boston for 3, who's been very good. The Reds for 3, who's been very good. But anyhow, we will go into this next game and see how this goes. Currently, the Cardinals sit in second place in the division. The Pirates are in fourth, ahead of just the Cubbies. You'll see James Paxton on the mound versus Kevin Comer tonight in that series for Game 2. Let's move on. It's 2 games, 12 minutes. Jesus Christ. All right, we're going to have to go a little faster. Apologies to the games we're going to talk about here next. Let's talk about the Padres and Brewers. Padres took a super early lead in this one as they would go up 4-0 in the second inning. And they would hold that lead for a minute until the top of the seventh. Shane McClanahan was pitching against Duncan Duane-Millar in this one. Shane McClanahan, of course, pitching for the Padres. Duncan Duane-Millar pitching for the Brewers. What inning did I say we had to go to? We had to go to the seventh, right? So 4-0 Padres heading into the seventh inning. And that's where things got a little dicey. Shane McClanahan still on the mound. Carlos Martinez would go down pretty quickly, literally on the first pitch, take the first down at the top of the seventh. Jock Peterson would then single before David McCormick got out. So we get 2 outs, runner on first, although technically David McCormick still at first. You then have Joe Capriva singles. We have now first and second. The runner from second, being Jock Peterson, would actually go from first to third on this play. Pretty bold for not a very fast player. You then have Bill La single, so McCormick would score. Oh, no, so they did get Jock Peterson. That was McCormick going first to third. That makes more sense. McCormick would score to drive in their first run of the day. Kevin Coloma would follow that up with a double. Capriva would score, and Bill LA would score. And so they actually scored 2 runs there, and they get 4-3. The interesting part here is that then Kevin Coloma gets a little bit greedy and tries to go around to third after scoring the 2 runs. I guess the throw came home, and he tried to go to third. He was thrown out at third base. It was supposed to be 2 outs, runner on second in the midst of a nice long rally here. That inning ends. So you think, all right, well, maybe the Padres have saved themselves. They will go through, threaten pretty good, a lot of long at bats, a couple of walks, but really just not much going on there. They'll leave the seventh still up 4-3. We'll then go to the eighth. Juan Sanchez will tie the game in a first pitch solo shot with 354 feet. Not a super long home run, but just long enough it got out of there. That'd be a tie game. As we go to the bottom of the eighth, the Padres unable to capitalize. Top of the ninth, really dangerous stuff as we had Daniel McCormick get hit by a pitch, and then Bill LA would singles. We had 2 on for Coloma. Coloma would strike out on 3 straight pitches. So we go to extra innings here after the Padres could not get anything going in the bottom of the ninth. But in the top of the 10th, it's all they needed, 1 extra frame, as Roberto Torres would single. What happened here? Oh, never mind. So yeah, I'm thinking of the wrong thing. So anyway, the Brewers would not be able to do anything here. The bottom of the 10th, the Padres won this game. totally fucked that up. Bryson Scott would come in and triple in the first at bat, um, before we'd have a sacrifice fly from Steve Cartwright, which would win the game as Bryson Scott would come home to score. The Padres would win 5-4. Apologies that I really butchered that one a little bit. Ichikawa would get his win. It's the first of the season out of the pen. Player of the game would be Shane McClanahan, who pitched pretty well here for the Padres. Padres moved to 8-6 as the Brewers fall to 6-7. Um, Brewers just maintain a little bit of confusion for me after they had a great season a couple of years back. They've turned into a fairly mediocre team. I guess we'll have to see what this happens. The Padres keeping pace in what is a weirdly competitive National League West. Not that it's weird that it's competitive, but it's weird that the Giants and the Padres are the ones that are competitive, while the Diamondbacks sit at the bottom. Here, the Dodgers being 8-5 makes total sense. So that is the end of that game. We have that series. Again, first game of a 4-game series, as you might expect there. Let's see. Let's talk American League quickly. I'll have to speed up a little bit, so apologies, American League. Let's talk Rays and Red Sox. We had Chris Sale pitching against Tyson Oswalt, and it was brilliant on both sides. Chris Sale went 7 1/3 innings, 5 hits, no walks, 5 strikeouts, no runs allowed. Tyson Oswalt would go 6 innings, 3 hits allowed, 1 walk, 5 strikeouts. Both pitchers would exit before throwing their 94th pitch of the game. Porter Coran would come in behind Chris Sale, throw 1 2/3 innings of scoreless baseball as well. He's been very good out of the pen this year. Before Robert Paulus would come in for Boston. On Tampa's side, you had somebody named G. Goodwin. That would be Gerald Goodwin, with their 2 scoreless innings, and then Aaron Ashby would come through and throw 2 more scoreless innings. 5 strikeouts, no hits, no walks for Ashby. This would go to extra innings. Despite 10 hits for the Rays, they were unable to score until the bottom of the 10th. Bottom of the 10th would feature Cade Cahill. He could sacrifice fly. Robert Paulus would come in to score. Really just an all-around beautiful game. Of the 10 hits that the Rays only 2 extra base hits. That Kurt Suzuki and Elliot Jenkins would both double. The Red Sox had 2 doubles as well, but really just a well-pitched baseball game between 2 teams fighting in a very, very congested American League East. The Rays would get the win and move to 8-5. The Sox would fall to 7-6 as they take the loss. I think that puts the Rays at the top of the American League East. It sure does. They're both tied here entering this game. The Rays have won 3 straight. The Sox have lost 3 straight. It's going in the wrong direction for the Boston Red Sox. This is game 1 of a 4-game series, right? No, that was game 4 of a 4-game series, as the Sox were looking for the split, but the Rays would take 3 wins. Those 3 wins they won were all over Boston. 2 of them were extra inning wins. Really impressive stuff. The Rays will now head north of the border to take on Toronto for 3 games, while the Red Sox will stay at home and they will face and welcome the Los Angeles Angels in for 3 games starting today. Ooh, there's a train. I don't know if you could hear that. The Blue Jays, speaking of the Blue Jays, would take on the Detroit Tigers in a battle of, let's call them, underperforming teams so far. They would enter the game. Let's see, the Tigers would be 5-6 entering. The Blue Jays would be 6-6 entering the game. You were looking at a matchup of Sean Gilmartin for the Toronto Blue Jays versus Chris Scalise for the Detroit Tigers. Scalise looking for his first one of the year, entering 0-2, and he would not get it. He would go 7 1/3 innings, give up 4 runs on 8 hits, strike out 6. He didn't pitch terribly, honestly. He hit 2 in the bottom of the 3rd, gave up 1 in the bottom of the 5th. So he had a lead going into the 8th when he was still pitching before giving up a run as Braulio Pardo hit a triple off Chris Scalise, and I guess drove in some sort of run there. Let's find out exactly what happened there in the bottom of the 8th. It's about why maybe he wasn't pulled. Bottom of the 8th, Braulio Pardo would triple off Chris Scalise. And the first at bat, and Josh Wilcox would fly out, and then they would pull in for Kyle Muller. So a couple of questions about maybe why Chris Scalise was left in so early. It was 109 pitches into the game too. So I don't know. Maybe they'd be pulling for Kyle Muller a little earlier. This game goes to extra innings. Regardless, Sean Gilmartin does enough. Brian Karapetian and Edison Tejada would come through for the win for the Jays, and they would be able to move over 500, tie themselves for second place with the Red Sox, as they try to build on what has been a disappointing season thus far by their standards. This is their 3rd win in a row. Like I said, they do sit in 3rd place here in a division that's very crowded as the Yankees and Orioles are right behind them at 6 and 7, respectively. Yankees and Orioles. The Blue Jays will take on the second hottest or equally hottest team in the American League East as they take on the Rays in Toronto for a 3-game series. It should be very fascinating for American League East fans here starting today. And let's see, the Tigers will take on the red hot San Francisco Giants. So that'll be a fun series. Last two games, might have to go through them really quickly just because I think I'm already late for a meeting. We have the Twins and the Yankees. Unsurprisingly, the Twins will win this game. The Yankees have been better than expected this year, but still, this is a very, very good team in Minnesota. Minnesota would score, 11 runs, all 11 of their runs in the first 4 innings off of starters Kwon Young Kim, 34-year-old lefty from South Korea, would give up two. We then have Mitchell, Small, a bunch of guys. They just come off of these 3 runs. So really bad pitching up front for New York before they'd be finally able to settle down. John Bauer wasn't exactly great. He went 4 innings, he went 5 runs, but with an offense producing like this, they were more than likely going to win anyways. Martin Lopez drove in 4. Marwin Gonzalez drove in 2. Gary Copeland drove in 1. The Twins team looks as dangerous as ever. They moved to 9-4. The Yankees fall to 6-7. Again, better than we expected before this thing started. The last game of the night was the A's and the Orioles. Talk about teams maybe playing differently than we expected. The A's sitting at 7-6. You have to be excited about that if you're Scott Gessford and the A's organization. The Orioles maybe a little bit worse than we expected, 6-7. Although I talked to manager Drew Hastings yesterday. He talked about their slow start last year, and he's not really worried about it. Steve Sheets looked great as he goes 6 and give up 2. He'd get the win. The loss would fall to somebody named Jay Elson. That would be Jeff Elson for the A's, as they would lose. Not what Scott Gessford was looking for. The A's sit in 3rd place in the AL West, and again, we talked about the Orioles sitting in 4th. This game was Game 4 of a 4-game series that was split between these two teams. The A's will now take on the Mets for a 3-game series. The Mets sit in the bottom of the National League East, and the Orioles will take on the White Sox for a 3-game series. They'll travel to Chicago to do so. The White Sox sit in 3rd in the American League Central, but everybody in the American League Central is multiple games below 500 outside of the Twins. Appreciate the time, and see y'all soon.